Hi, it's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing MPR and the editor of Punchline magazine. Good morning to Punchline Talks, the business briefing. And today I'm with Sam Holliday from the Federation of a Small Business, the business development manager for this side of the planet. We're also joined by SSL Managing Director, Seven Side Software, Roger White. Good morning, Roger.
Morning, Mark.
And finally, at long last, we actually have Ryan Hancock, Director of Hazlewoods, who I incompetently last week actually cut off and couldn't get him on. So, and this morning, poor Ryan trying to join us via iPhone, and I kicked him out as well. So anyway, Ryan, fantastic that you persevered, and it's great to see you again, sir.
Morning. Thanks for having me eventually.
You didn't never get the hint, did you? Anyway, cracking on with today's news. Let's start with you, Sam. What have you got from the national newspapers?
Well, it's not exactly hard, I wouldn't have thought, to be a newspaper editor at the moment, because, with the furlough and with what's happening across the pond in America, you could fill the entire papers with that. And I've got 2 or 3 papers, and pretty much they have done. We can obviously talk about the furlough. We can talk about the presidential election. But the thing that struck me most, I picked up the Mail, and I'll just put that picture. Can you all see that picture?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, that's standing room only.
That was the Tube yesterday. Now, not that wasn't the middle of last year. That was yesterday, and I think it kind of brought home to me. I popped over to my local newspaper to pick up the papers, and I thought the roads would be empty, the shop would be empty. Neither, and this was like 6:15 in the morning. It doesn't feel like it did before. We all thought we're all calling this lockdown 2, if you like, but it doesn't feel that way. And in fact, I picked up the Sun as well, which is a rare thing for me, but duty served. And already we've got the Sun saying that the lock is ticking. They're saying we've got to come out of this quick. There's already a feeling that this is like an inconvenience. And I just wonder whether it's been taken as seriously as the previous lockdown. Because you can remember the empty streets of Gloucester, empty roads. It doesn't feel like that at all. I know the schools are back. That makes a big difference. But it definitely feels that. And that picture really is shocking. That shouldn't be like that on a normal day, let alone a lockdown day.
No, I think you're definitely right. I think I had drove over to Gloucestershire Police Station actually yesterday to the headquarters over there for a chat, and not for me, by the way, for business.
I have to confess, Mark, it's a good time.
Too much information there. Anyway, I went over there, and you're right. And I don't think as many sort of home-based stores, plumbing outlets, all the sort of building merchandise companies are going to close this time. I think a lot of businesses are going to stay open, and it's going to be a completely different environment, especially with the kids going to school. Roger, what have you picked out, mate?
Well, just to go a little bit away from the pandemic, one of the news items from yesterday that caught my eye was that Dominic Chappell, the former owner of British Home Stores, was jailed for 6 years for tax evasion. And obviously the whole end of BHS was a really sad ending for what was used to be such a great bastion of the high street. It just goes to show, actually, to me that obviously us business owners, we pay our taxes, and you see people with sort of bigger setups on their yachts and taking their big expensive holidays and driving their plush cars. But it goes to show that if you don't do things properly, the great British taxman will catch you in the end. And it was very interesting. I thought that obviously this is all over the unpaid taxes and the massive pension deficit. And it really, to me, was a very sad ending. Obviously, it's quite a few years ago now, 2015, but very sad ending for British Home Stores. And actually, the fact that it ended in such a bad way, and obviously there was corruption, and the whole deal was definitely very dodgy. So that story really caught my eye. As much as I'd love to be on a plush yacht, I can't see that happening this year.
Don't sound too bitter then. That leads us very nice to Ryan, obviously, talking about tax. And I nearly said it all the rest of it. Ryan, what have you picked out?
Well, there's once you get past all the US business, as it were, which takes up probably half the newspapers at the moment. There is some other bits and pieces in there. Quite what's been quite prevalent in the news, even on your website, I think actually, was about Marks and Spencers posting their first loss in was it 94 years. So even though they managed to weather the Second World War, they've not quite managed to get through the first half of 2020. So what kind of message does that send out? I think what I have been reading is that obviously the big national companies like Marks and Spencers, your supermarkets, and all the supermarket chains and the retail chains have been hit very, very hard. But I suppose if there is a silver lining, I think I was reading that the local businesses, the local retails, have actually fared much, much better. Not great, but much, much better than those national chains, which is a little chink of light in this time.
Yeah,
I think, and that leads us back over to Sam actually, because being the chair, the business development for the Federation of Small Business. What's the sort of feedback? What's the feeling at the moment, Sam, going into this lockdown now with your members?
Well, I'll come back to what Ryan was saying there, because I think it's absolutely right. In fact, it's one of the stories I highlighted from Punchline, actually. And there was a very good piece in Punchline about the fact that independent shops are proving to be more resilient, because their overheads are less, they're not having to fund the yachts that Roger's talking about. And more independent stores came back than was expected. So that was good news. I think this second wave is a body blow, though, because I think money was starting to come into some of them businesses. They're starting to feel confident. And I think for the retail, I read somewhere that in November, a lot of retailers would take as much money as they were doing 2 or 3 months earlier in the year. So to wipe that out completely. And also what they'll be cross about is that keeping things like garden centres open, that we're selling a lot of Christmassy stuff. Now, a lot of that Christmassy stuff will be on sale in those smaller shops, but you won't be able to buy it. So you'll be forced to go to the national chains. We'll be forced to use Amazon again directly. And so it's that bit of an imbalance. So what I am detecting is the first lockdown, my phone never stopped ringing. It was a lot of panicky businesses and so forth. This time it's quieter. I think people know where we're going. They are expecting the government to provide support. That we know that they've changed the furlough and things. So there is an expectancy that there will be some support. But Mark Whittle, who Mark will know, is a membership advisor for the FSB, was telling me he's in Cheltenham, that he drove past a pub the other day that just had a big sign up saying, "That's it, we quit," as if to say this is one step too far. And we're just gonna have to wait and see. But this is a tough month for everyone, but so tough for retailers that need that money to get them through January, February. It goes traditionally quite quiet.
I think you're dead right. Normally retailers make their killing now, isn't it? November, December, run up to Christmas. A lot of the pubs and restaurants, that's when they normally have the Christmas parties. And again, they've got to make as much money as possible to get them over those lean months, which are normally January and February and March. And that isn't going to help them with their cash flow. And I do fear that they'll hang on. A lot of companies will hang on, and then we'll see a lot of.
And Mark, if I could just make another point, because it's based on something both Roger and Ryan said. Roger highlighted BHS, Ryan highlighted Marks and Spencers. Obviously, we deal with small businesses, but if BHS has been closed all that time now in Westgate, if Marks was to go as well, that affects the small businesses around them, because it stops you going into town. You think you might, I'm going to go into Marks and Spencers, I'm going to go into BHS. They're not there. You just don't go into town. And so the little retailers suffer as well. The little retailers need the big retailers to succeed as well. And without them, I mean, Westgate's never been the same, really, since places like BHS closed. And the thought of losing Marks and Spencers would be a body blow, and Debenhams don't even go there. The effect on Gloucester, if Debenhams was to close, would be awful.
Just one thing on Marks and Spencers. I think one of their recent successes is the food delivery, the big change with the food delivery options. That's been a really good success for them. And obviously they were inundated when they launched with, I think it's Ocado, isn't it, with the deliveries of their food. And again, it's about adaptability, isn't it? The fact that they're not just sat there. Obviously they've got their issues, but they are working on things to actually come up with other solutions.
So this time, Roger, because last time we spoke for the first lockdown, Roger does all our Roger's business SSL does all Punchlines, IT and computing. You have done for a long time. Always did a great job, Roger. Just like to say that you came around my house, you set this up here upstairs, and all the rest. Did a fantastic job. What was it like that first lockdown, and what's it like this different lockdown? If you can, give us a quick couple of minutes on that.
Yeah, it was very interesting on the 23rd of March when Boris said, right, everybody work from home. You can imagine as an IT tech company, we were just completely inundated with requests. Obviously, customers and companies were prepared for remote working into varying degrees. Obviously, some were already set up for it, and others hadn't given it any thought, which is completely understandable. But we were just completely inundated for about 10 days from the 23rd of March with people wanting laptops, webcams, and obviously the demand just went off the scale. So it was a real roller coaster, because then what happened was, as everybody got set up for home working, then of course, then the furlough companies started furloughing all their staff to the point where the support just dropped requirement, the help desk requirement just dropped off a cliff because everybody was furloughed. So if everybody's furloughed, they don't need any support. So it just went dead, and it's just a real roller coaster. And then obviously companies, sort of towards July, August, companies started picking up again and getting going. And then there was another increase in demand as people were adapting their businesses, some working back in the office, and the demand went back up again. But this time with the second lockdown, although it's been busy, it's not anything like what it was before in terms of demand, because I think people are already set up for the remote working that need to be. Although there's still been quite a spike again on things like laptops, trying to get laptops. Has been really hard again. So real roller coaster. It's been quite a journey.
What about you then, Ryan? Have you seen a different movement in your business, the way that Hazlewoods work, in your own work?
Yeah, we certainly have. So obviously, the first lockdown meant that everybody was working remotely. There was certain aspects of our business that were already set up for remote working. So our audit teams, for example, they're always out and about at companies' premises. So that wasn't such a hardship. But there were quite a number of people that were on desktop machines and office-based hardware that had to be, re-kitted out so that they could work effectively from home as well. Now, obviously, tail end of August, things started opening back up. Phased return back to the offices. So I'm out of it. When I am in the office, I'm working out of a different office now than I used to. So we've had to have a reshuffle there as well. Absolutely right. We've had a push on replacing all of our desk-based machines for laptops so that everybody can be ready. And to be honest, like many other businesses, this second lockdown, we are much better prepared than we were before. We can, as much as we don't want to, we can, change our routine, change where we're working from, and hopefully be as effective as we would as if we were in the office. I think I probably. Yeah.
What about the furlough itself and the way that your clients are reacting to it? For tax advice, for business advice, or has there been? Are they? I don't know about you, but we talked about it before. There was a panic. There was oh my goodness, what are we going to do? We've gone through that now. And what about this second tranche?
Yeah, well, I guess the biggest problem of late is the changing the goalposts every week or so. The original furlough arrangements changed partway through the summer. They were literally about to change. Was it this week? When suddenly there's been a turnaround, and the not quite the same version of furlough is back on the table again until the end of November. Then yesterday they said, well, actually, no, it's to the end of March. So it's an ever-changing situation. We try and put as much information out there on our website and email releases as possible as soon as things change for our clients to try and keep up to date as best as we can. The difficulty, of course, is it's quite easy to put these changes in place, but it's then left up to businesses and firms like ourselves to pick up the pieces and make them work. The first furlough arrangement is a classic example where nobody actually knew how mechanically that was going to work until maybe a week or so before the portal was open. The portal wasn't even open until, what was it, the end of April, and everybody was screaming, "How do we register? How do we register?" This time it's better, but the rules keep changing. Now we're in a situation where it should last until March, but they're going to review it in January. But let's face it, once this first 4 weeks are out of the way, what's going to happen in December? Something's likely to change again. I can't see it going all the way till Christmas without another change in there. The speed that things are moving.
Yeah, I mean,
one thing I would say is the one thing I must praise the government for is the furlough portal where you upload your information actually has worked really well, considering they developed it so quickly. And we've had all this negative press about track and trace, obviously completely different, but the portal has quietly worked, having been developed from scratch. It's quietly worked without any fuss. Praise indeed on that aspect.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. Go over to you then, Sam, about talking about the different governments' offers. One of the things that has changed is the freelancing. If I've got this right, they've upped the money for freelancers from 40%, is it, to 80% of earnings?
Yeah, I'm not sure actually freelancers are covered. It's self-employed people that can show their records for over 3 years and the profits one. I think there's still quite a lot of people who are excluded again, and the government have been quite intransigent on that, because obviously the FSB has been involved in a lot of conversations with the Chancellor, and it's a one thing he's not really moving on. But the furlough thing is it has been frustrating in a way. I mean, my brother-in-law lost his job on the October 31st. That was the end of the furlough, because 2 weeks before the end of the furloughs that you're supposed to see, his company took him into redundancy consultations and he lost his job. Luckily, he's managed to get something else, which is a good thing. But it goes to show the confusion. But I was a little bit surprised when I heard it was till March, and I thought, well, hang on a minute, March? This thing's supposed to end in December 2nd. So I suspect what's going to happen is that on December the 2nd, the tiers thing will come into operation. So, wherever you are in the tiers, might decide whether you stay in, you're going to need furlough, whether you can go back to work. But it's interesting in a Gloucestershire context, because I was involved in a roundtable event the other day with the Director of Public Health for Gloucestershire, and she was saying about how the figures they were still very low compared to a lot of the parts of the country. But to put that into context, it's doubled in a week, the amount of cases. So, and the reason that the Southwest has not really been on the radar is because the numbers have been so low. But the wider Southwest, beyond Bristol, there aren't many big hospitals, Somebody told me the other day, in Cornwall alone, there's only 14 ICU beds. Now, that won't take very long to fill. So then the people will come up to Devon, who will then come up to, and suddenly you can see how it all unfolds. Yes. And I think we all know this over the last 10, 15 years. I don't remember a Christmas when there hasn't been major stories on the news and in the press about the hospitals being full. No, they're full anyway. So add in all the people, the 11,000 people that are currently in hospital with coronavirus, on top of those that will have flu and all the other things that we know about, you can see why they're worried. So I think they did the right thing. And the other thing I'll say about the furlough scheme as well, and it was interesting, Roger praising it, which was good to hear, is that the government and councils will never again be able to sort of say it's going to take months to operate things. Do you remember in the past, if they did something, they're going to make a slight change in the tax rules, they'd tell you in October, and it wouldn't come into effect till April the 1st, and you got the impression that's because it took 6 months to put in place. It clearly shows that government can be quicker than they've ever conned us before. So we know in future they won't be able to get away with it, or it takes months to do this. They're doing things overnight. They're life-changing.
Yeah,
so that's a positive.
Quite amazing. Going on I'll go back to the sort of slightly negative, and you are right. The government still doesn't get the fact that if you're running a limited company and you're paying yourself in dividends, you are absolutely buggered. Let's be honest about it. A lot of these people have been using their life savings. They don't know where their companies are. Do they get a government grant? Do they get more debt for the company? They're not too sure of it. And those people I'm one of them actually. Unfortunately, we've done well. We've been able to adapt, but lots of other companies can't adapt. And if you're a pub owner or restaurateur, or I mean, goodness gracious, what's your view on that, Ryan?
What's my view? It's a difficult one. There's an argument to say that's part of the risk of being a business owner, but that doesn't help the people that are in that position who have taken the best advice they can to support their business, support their lives, and suddenly something like this happens, and it turns it on its head. All we can really help with is to try and limit the problem, not solve it in this situation. But as we've already said, there are lots of businesses out there, yourself included, that are adapting and finding ways. There's a few instances in your magazine that I've seen this week, which show how businesses have adapted. Things like the George Hotel, who are doing contactless rooms, and Stewart Golf, who have got this follow you buggy. They're finding new ways in. Some of them quite fun. Innovation is rife around the county. It always has been, and it's really good to see that people are able to adapt that way. Maybe it's a case of survival for some. They have to adapt, or they can't survive. But still, the level of innovation is really good in this county, I think.
I couldn't agree more. Guys, have you come across any other companies that have changed the way that have been working as well? Sam, Roger?
I think the Stewart Golf ones particularly, they're a customer of ours, and it's a very good example of a Gloucestershire company exporting around the world, particularly with the US, with their golf trolleys, with as you say, the new model, the Q Follow, which they've just launched, which they've had in development for a long time. But what I love about being in business in Gloucestershire is there's so many great companies of all sizes who are exporting expertise and products all around the world, and Gloucestershire, it just shows even during these what Ryan was saying, even during these difficult times, companies are still forging ahead with things, and in the case of Stewart Golf, exporting record numbers of the trolleys to the US because the golf courses were open. And of course, obviously, you don't have to touch your trolley if it's following your golf trolley, if it's following you around. So you probably need to get one, Mark.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I actually do have a Stewart Golf Trolley, but not the one that you're talking about. I've got the other one that flips open and just falls out of, and it's an amazing bit of kit actually, and I do love it. So no, I know where you're coming from. Sam, have you got any other stories that you picked up?
Very interesting, because we almost have picked up on the same story. I picked up about Stewart Golf as well, because I know you're obsessed with bizarre sport. But you, if the new one's going to be £1,749, if you can afford one of them, Mark, you don't need any help from Richie Sunak. That's what I'm saying.
I haven't got one of those. I got one for £200, mate.
All right, then you're forgiven. But no, I think. Do you know what I found really interesting? Because we do regular networking for FSB members and so forth. And I've actually been on calls, and at the start you quickly go around, say hello to people on some occasions. I've heard people whose business has changed from 6 months ago to now. They'll say, oh, my name is blah, blah, blah. And there's a lady I can think of from the Forest of Dean who within about a month had changed virtually everything she was doing to provide PPE, provide these things, And I just thought that's perfect. And a lot of businesses are doing that. And I'll tell you something else that's encouraging as well. I heard yesterday about the amount of new businesses that are starting.
Yes.
There hasn't ever been a recession or anything in this country where a lot of new businesses aren't created. And apparently in the Southwest, it's quite a high figure. And that will be people, again, like the people I'm talking about, who had business model A, who may have kept business model A in the background and alive, but have now into business model B. And they're the ones that I think are going to do well. And I think Gloucestershire is a very entrepreneur-led community. So I think that's definitely real positive.
And that leads me very nicely, actually, over to G First LEP, because I was down there actually this week. I was like a dog with a bone, really. My tail was wagging like anything, because I was actually meeting real people. So I haven't met many people over the last 4 or 5 months, and it was great to meet some of the team at G First. And talk about praise, I'd actually like to give those guys a bit of praise, actually, because sometimes they are forgotten. They work extremely hard behind the scenes, champion the Gloucestershire business community. They are there at the end of the phone. And what I was really, really impressed with, and I don't know if any of you guys saw this, they did an e-newsletter, and it was all about mental health. And you know, I'm very fortunate. I don't know about you, but I've had some dark moments over the last 6-7 months, and I've talked to you. You know, it's just about talking to different people, isn't it? And we've got that network, but some people don't have that network. And I just thought, fair play to them, fair play, G1st LEP. They came out with these couple of e-newsletter bulletins about mental health, where you can get. It was just really, really good. You know, just a little bit out of the box, something very different for them, and it's something that we'd definitely like to carry on in Punchline as well. Is there, Roger? Is there any other stories that caught your eye this week from Punchline?
I've got a great story that I just want to share with you. I found this story that basically this elderly couple were left a hoard of Star Wars toys, which they've now sold at auction for £400,000. So, and the thing is, I remember having those Star Wars figures when they came out. But of course, the key, I obviously haven't got any of them now, sadly. So obviously, you look at these things and you think, oh, I wish I'd kept my Star Wars toy figure collection all those years ago. But of course, the big thing with all this is they've got to be in the original boxes. So how many times do you see old toy things coming up in auction and stuff like that? But of course, at the time, you never keep the packaging. You always throw the packaging away.
I can imagine a young Roger White with his shorts on, playing on the floor with his little Star Wars Darth Vader, shooting it up, mate.
That's it. So the Star Destroyer Commander, in its original packaging, was worth at auction £32,500. And I had one of those, but of course it's long since gone. And at the time, the packaging was cast aside for my enthusiasm, you know, for Star Wars. Just made me chuckle that you know, that you've got all this collection that somebody's actually held on to in the original packaging, that's sold for all this money. So
who would have thought that would have been a business model years and years ago?
Exactly.
I think it's a bit sad, mate. I think you should take it out and play with it. Sam, have you got a last story from us?
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, I just picked up an interesting story in the Mail about a footballer. He's a German footballer, and he's in England, and he's just been done for doing 97 miles an hour on the M1. And his excuse was that it's because he's from Germany, and he temporarily forgot that it was in miles, not kilometres. Now, that might be legitimate, but this was 12 o'clock at night. He's in a very, very flash Mercedes. Yeah. And he's lived in England for 7 years. His name is Hazlewoods, and if that name rings any bells, it's because if you think he's making this excuse to try and get out of paying the fine because he can't afford it, which you could understand, he earns £350,000 a week, and he's trying to get out of. Well, obviously he's worried he's going to lose a ban, but 12 o'clock at night, M1, empty M1. He's saying that he was only trying to do 60 miles an hour. Not 97 miles an hour, but he got it mixed up. So I feel we should all start a fund, shall we? We all start a crowd fund to support £350,000 a week, Mr. Lizzle, who's terrible at the moment, can't get a game. All he can do is ride around in his flash car. So I'm going to throw in the first £5.
I'm going to donate one of my Star Wars action figures.
So Ryan, have you got a last story for us, please?
Yeah, I got a quick one. But what I want to know more importantly is how much are the Star Wars figures outside the box? Because I'm going to go up in my attic in a minute.
They've got to be dust-free. You'll need to dust them off.
Yeah, I can do that. But yeah, I've gone a bit international. I've gone for a cutesy picture of a wombat. If you can see one of those.
Oh yeah, very nice.
And this is in the Guardian, who have mentioned that the wombat in America is one of the underrated animals over there, one of the hardiest, and one of their methods of survival is the fact that they've got basically an armored backside, which I thought was a bit of a metaphor for where we are at the minute, where you just need to have a bit of a thick skin, get your head down, get burrowing, get working, and try and protect yourself as best you can, whether it's from the back or the front or the side. So yeah, little cute picture to to end things on, I thought.
I think there's going to be Hazlewoods' new advertising campaign.
I know, but I can't let you get away with this one, Mark. Ryan's already mentioned this story about that Cheltenham hotel, the George, which has gone contactless and everything. Your headline in Punchline, no less, was Cheltenham hotel offers contactless bed for work trips. Contactless bed? Does that mean you have to hover?
Yes, mate.
New technology.
That
It's very comfortable.
That headline made me read the story. I thought, contactless bed, this is incredible.
Look, we spend a lot of time on these headings, you know.
Yeah, I can tell. Yeah.
And just talking about dust, that you know, dusting off things that you find in your attic. I was in my garage trying to sort a few things out to take it down into a speedy skip, and lo and behold, I emptied this box. I found this box. And last time we met, Sam, you gave me a whole load of
Did I?
Federation of Small Business mugs. So I know what to do with it. So if anybody wants a Federation Small Business mug, I've got a whole box load of them here. Just drop me a line at marketnewsmarketingpr.co.uk.
I've often been called an FSB mug, so I'll take one of them.
And
In a few years' time, if they're still in their boxes, they'll be worth a fortune.
Anyway, great. It's great to see you. Thank you, Roger, Sam, and Ryan, and catch us next week on Punchline Talks. Thanks very much. Cheers, guys.
Bye. Have a good day.